Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question comes from Chelsea in Chicago. Chelsea asks, we don't set goals at our company, but I'm a very goal-driven person. What do I need to know to start setting goals and be successful? That is a fantastic question, Chelsea. Thank you for submitting. And honestly, just the fact that you're thinking about this puts you ahead of like 90% of salespeople out there because you are thinking about what do I do with these goals? How do I attain what I want to attain? And my suggestion would be first write it down. Write it down. Most people don't ever write down their goals and then they never come to fruition. But when you write it down and build upon that, it comes to fruition. 90% of goals don't happen because we simply never write it down. And 67% of stats are made up on the spot. So I don't know what the real statistic is, but I do know writing it down has a huge impact on whether it actually happens or not. So first, write that down. So as you ask this question, I think a lot about like the first time I had to set goals. And as a sales leader, I came in and I inherited a sales team. And on that sales team, I had two brand new people. I had one grumpy veteran with an attitude problem, one steady Eddie kind of guy, and then a few other people on my team. And it was our first month where we had to set goals. And so we came in and I just said, "Hey, what are you guys going to hit this month?" Right? Because GM told me set goals, and I said, "All right, let's set goals." So we sat down, and this was in the automotive industry, and so we were selling cars. It was at a large Toyota dealership, and so we sat down. I said, "What are you guys going to do this month?" Right? And they began to rattle off numbers as I went guy to guy to guy. It was, I'm going to do 20. I'm going to do 22. I'm going to do 24. I'm going to do 25. Like it was all in these 20s. Now, to put this in perspective, in the industry, like the benchmark, the average salesperson sold about 12, right? A good salesperson sold 20. If you were above 20 in the mid 20s, like you were pretty great, right? Like you were top 10%. And so here I am with this team of two brand new guys, a steady Eddie, a veteran with an attitude problem, and a few others. And we're all like rattling off 20 plus cars. And I was like, this is fantastic. All right, great attitude, guys. Let's go do it. Put it in my desk, never looked at it again until my GM asked me how we're doing about goals. And this is the 30th of the month, right? And so I pull it out of my desk, straighten it out because it was all crumpled in there. And I take a look at what their goals were and I compare it to where they're actually at. And I was horrified. So I called a team meeting. I brought everybody in together and it went something like, Joe, you said 22, you're at 8. Jim, you said 24, you're at 9. Something like that. Everybody was way off of what they had said. And it was the 30th of the month. So we had like today and tomorrow to do something about this. And so it was kind of like, oh, go do what you can, guys. And that's what we missed miserably. It was miserable. And out of 6 sales teams, we were in 6th place. So I struggled with that for a few months. And then I saw this Gatorade commercial. You can probably still Google it and find it, but this Gatorade commercial, it was all these athletes. And like in one setting, there was these football players, right? And one football player made a big hit and they were all chanting to each other, one more, right? And then it shows a bunch of athletes in the weight room and they're bench pressing and it's one more. And then it's some gals on the soccer field and they're going through some repetitions and they're chanting at each other, one more. And that was the theme, one more. And it kind of clicked in my head, like, yeah, one more. Like you can always do one more, right? Like when I go to the gym, I get to that point of failure where I'm lifting and I always think like I can do one more, just one more. And I started to think like, imagine what would happen in your life if you just did one more of like all these little things. So I brought this to my team. We were at the point where we were going to set goals again. And I introduced this concept of one more. And so I said, don't tell me what I want to hear. Don't wherever you were last month, your goal this month is just one more. So if you sold 9 last month, your goal is 10. If you sold 18 last month, your goal is 19. It was just one more. But then I kept that going as a mantra and we broke that down into everything. So it wasn't just one more sale because that's like the end result, but I wanted this to like percolate into everything. So it was like you could take one more customer before you go home. You could make one more phone call before you went home. You could go on one more demo. You could do one more follow-up call. Like you just one more of everything, right? And so what happened is we started to see success. We started to hit our goals. And the guys got excited because now we weren't missing our goals by leaps and bounds. We were actually hitting our goals. And the next month we kept that going. So whatever they hit that month, one more. And whatever they hit that month, the next month it was one more. And my team started to go from 6th place to 5th to 4th to 3rd to 2nd to 1st, right? And in automotive, they got the big title belt, the wrestling title belt. We had the title belt and we kept that month after month after month because we didn't stop there. We weren't competing with the other teams. We were competing with the one more. We were focused on us versus us. It wasn't us versus everybody else. One more was the mantra. So I think about that story as we talk about goal setting, right? Now, if you've probably heard of SMART goals before. If you have, I'm not going to go deep into SMART goals here. If you haven't heard of SMART goals, Google it. It'll lay it out there, right? So they have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And I add to that though. I make my goals smarter. So I'll go into the here in a minute, but a couple of things on SMART goals. So they ask specific. This is where I think of like, what are the actionables? That's what I call them, the actionables. What are the actions you're going to do? What are the things you have control of, right? Because it was for the guys on my team, it wasn't the end goal. Yes, there was the end goal, but that one more percolated into everything else. One more customer, one more call, one more demo, right? Like those are the things they had control of in the moment, right? So in that goal, the specific is stating what those actionables are. And I always think of it almost like a contract, whereas I don't want any loopholes. I don't want any like I can get out of this at the end. I can blame somebody or something of why I didn't hit my goal. I write this as if I'm specific enough, if I do this and my sales leader does this, there's no reason we shouldn't hit this goal at the end of the month. So it's very specific, like a contract, right? The measurable, right? It should be something that you can measure. And that's usually pretty easy in sales. You can measure closing percentage. You can measure average sale. You might want to make sure you're specific. Like if you're making a 3-month goal, like a quarterly goal, and you say you're going to increase closing percentage by 5%, is that 5% each month? Is that 5% in the end? Is that 5% just the last month? Just make sure you're specific about what you're measuring there. Some things are tougher to measure, but you can get creative. I had a guy that was on my team that he suffered from RBF. I don't really know what that stands for, but he didn't smile a lot. And so we noticed that he just kind of looked grumpy, right? And so him and I talked about it and we came up with a goal of him just smiling more. And we came up with a goal of smiling 10 times throughout the day when he's with a customer. And to measure that, what I did was I put 10 pennies in my pocket. And every time I saw him smile with a customer, I would move a penny from the right pocket to the left pocket. And by the end of the day, all 10 pennies should be in the left pocket. So we took something that was kind of hard to measure and we made it measurable. And it made him aware of it. And it made him focus on smiling with the customer to then he was smiling more, right? And he came off friendlier and it made his sales process go better. So measurable, right? Achievable. That's that one more that I came up with my team. Our big mistake was we were creating goals that weren't achievable. You want to make sure these goals are achievable. Relevant. It's got to be tied into your job, right? I think that one goes without saying. Like whatever our goals are should be focused on what our job is. And then time bound. You want to have a time when you're checking this. This should be completed by, and that kind of goes into the specifics. Now, if you're thinking bigger picture, like as a company, as a team, that's where if you read like Traction by Gino Wickman or you look at like EOS, they'll start with like the 10-year goal, like the big, hairy, audacious goal. Where do you want to be 10 years from now? And they break it down. So to be there in 10 years, I got to be here in 5 years. And in 5 years, I got to be here in 3 years. And in 3 years, I got to be here in 1 year. And then I break that down into quarters and then that down into individual months and actions, right? But now I've got like this roadmap of where I'm going, and everything is time bound here. So that's bigger picture time bound, but I want to have an end date. So that's SMART goals. But what makes it a smarter goal? What's the So here's the. The is E. It has to be the employee's idea. Has to be their goals, their action. They got to be bought in on it. I can't tell them what their goal is going to be. And I realize you're listening to this and thinking like, well, Chris, you said in your one more, you gave them the goal. I did. You're right. I broke that rule. But these things have to be their idea. And I think about this, like when my wife wants me to do something, if I'm not bought in on it, like kind of more half-hearted, right? When my boss tells me to do something, if it ain't my idea, I'm more half-hearted. But when it's my idea, I'm bought in. I'm doing it. I'm getting it across the finish line. That's the same with everybody. Like everybody's like, when it's your idea, you're bought in. So I want to create an environment where we have a culture where we're bought in. And it is the employee's idea. Their goal is their idea. And we can discuss that and we can move it if it's too low or too high, but it has to be their idea. If it's not their idea, these goals aren't going to work. Now the is the revisited, and I would say revisited frequently. We have to check in on these. And that's where I failed that first month too. I didn't check in on my goals until the 30th of the month. That's too late. If this was a car, I'm in the ditch, almost flipped upside down already. I want to catch this when I'm starting to drift towards the ditch so I can bring it back and not end up in the ditch. That's where those things like ride alongs, training, one-on-ones, doing those things consistently will be those stop gaps that catch us from going into the ditch. So we have to revisit this frequently. So that's the smarter goals. I would lay out my goals in that manner. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, employee's idea, and revisited frequently. And I guess the only thing I would add, it didn't say this in the question. So it sounds like you're an individual salesperson. So I don't know if you're talking about doing this as a team or an individual, but if you're doing this as a team, if you're a sales leader listening and doing this as a team, if you're starting this out, I would, wherever you think your goals are going to be at, aim a little lower. What I want to accomplish is if I'm rolling this with a team, I want them to have a positive interaction with. I want them to achieve success. I want them to taste success. The last thing I want to have is to roll out these goals and then we don't hit these goals and everybody's got this sour taste in their mouth of setting goals because we all just failed, right? To start out, I would maybe lower the bar a little bit just to get a taste of success. And then as we go, we can ramp these up. The other thing I would suggest if you're a team is give yourself some grace. If you read Traction by Gino Wickman, he says in there, it takes at least a year to get a goal setting process down. And I experienced that myself as I would set goals with my team. You either set them way too high or you set them way too low and they're achieved easily, or you do a poor job stating what those specifics are, or you don't put your part in there so the employee does everything but you're not helping. Like you miss on a lot of fronts. Give yourself some grace. These take a year to get down. And I would tell my team that too. Like, hey, we're going to start down this process. And this is what it's going to look like in the future. This is what successful teams and companies do. But we're going to have some bumps along the road as we get there. But let's focus on making them smarter goals. Let's know that when we make a mistake, we're going to correct it and we'll get better each month. And then you're in a spot where you're setting goals and you're achieving goals and you're growing. And that's where I want to be. I want to be growing. Because if I'm not growing, I'm dying. So that's today's question of the day. Start following if you're not following. We're on major streaming services. Make sure you rate and leave a comment as well. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are going to be listed in the show description. Let's get it answered. Let's get your question asked and answered. Or if you're a Nexstar member, schedule a call with me and we can address this one-on-one. We can get very specific to your situation. I'm Coach Chris. We'll see you tomorrow.